A reading from the Gospel according to St. John, the 6th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. When the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were beside the sea, they themselves got into boats and went to Capernaum looking for Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for food that perishes, but for the food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For it is on him that God the Father has set his seal." Then he said to him, "What must we do to perform the works of God?" Jesus answered them, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him he has sent." So they said to him, "What sign are you going to give us then, so that we may see it and believe you? What work are you performing? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, 'He gave them bread from heaven to eat.'" Then Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. So let's talk a little bit about gifts. You've been given gifts, right? Everybody's been given gifts at some point, right? So I want to share a couple of these. If you ever go into my office, this sits on the front of my desk, and it's a carving of the Last Supper. It's beautiful. I love it. I was given this from a couple at my internship site. And so every time I walk in, I think about them. I think about the conversations we had. I think about, wonderful different things. It's a beautiful gift. I love it. Gifts are something that somebody gives to somebody else. They can come in a variety of different forms, and they help us remember a person. They show appreciation. They come in a variety of ways, right? There's gift cards. Gift cards are the things that say, "I want to give you something. I just don't know what to get you, so here, pick something for yourself." And that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Gifts come in other forms too, right? There's physical gifts, those type of things. But we all have been given other types of gifts, things that we're good at. God has given us things, a gift, right? One of my gifts, and I would imagine not a lot of other people would call this a gift, is I love reading deep theological books and deep philosophical books that most people would say, "Whoa." Abby's laughing over there. I read them, I love them, I start thinking about stuff and all that type of thing. This is a gift that has been given to me. Likewise, I have been given the gift of enjoying running. And again, for a lot of folks, that sounds not like a gift, but a curse, but I enjoy it. It's a gift that I have, and it has taught me many lessons over the years. Every time I do a race, it teaches me a lesson. Gifts come in so many different forms, and we all have a gift. The question is, what do we do with these gifts? Right? I mean, gifts really bring something out in us. Somebody noticed something about us sometimes. We're given a gift to highlight that. Sometimes people prod us and poke us. They give us a gift that prod us and poke us and say, "Hey, you don't realize that you're gifted in this area." And it's a way to bring something out of somebody. In our epistle reading, we get a discussion about gifts. The letter is credited to Paul, but it's debatable about whether Paul wrote it or not. I'm just going to say Paul for now for the sake of this. And in verse 7 it says, "But each of us was given grace according to the measure of Christ's gift." What is grace? Grace is something that we don't deserve. We're given it. It's a gift, right? The measure of Christ's gift. This is given to us, right? This section, this reading that we have is the summary of the good news in its core. God gives us something incredible, and then we in turn do something with that. Not because we need to earn something, but because we have been changed and transformed and given gifts, and then we have a responsibility to do something with them. Bonhoeffer would talk about the idea of cheap grace, which is essentially, there's no responsibility, there's no expectation of change or anything of that nature, right? That's not what this is about. Costly grace, cost Jesus his earthly life. And it goes on, he gave gifts to his people, right? And so God gives us gifts. We're God's people. God gives us gifts all the time in a variety of different ways, sometimes physical, sometimes mental, sometimes emotional, spiritual. Gifts and talents that we have. Every single one of you have been given gifts by God in a variety of different ways. Things that if I thought about them, I'd be like, ooh, no, that's not for me. Well, that's because it's not my gift. Just as I don't expect any of you to go running with me. Not your gift. That's okay. I mean, if you want to, that's fine. But not your gift. That's okay. We're going to see some of those gifts later today, and I invite you, if you want to have fun with kids, you can come and help out VBS. We got some people who are very gifted working with children. It's wonderful to see that. So let's talk about what these gifts are. Paul here gives us a list of the fivefold ministries, the fivefold gifts. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a list here for the church in Ephesus. Other gifts and roles are given, especially in 1 Timothy. It talks about bishops and deacons. There's talks about elders. Those are kind of like official roles. It's a little different than what the gifts here are. So it says in verse 11, the gifts he gave were that some would be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers. So let's just talk briefly about each one of those. An apostle. What's an apostle? Anybody got any ideas? What's an apostle? It's the simple answer to that is one who is sent. One who is sent. Essentially, if you want to think about it this way, apostles are builders. They have a vision to build something, a community of some sort. They're the faith entrepreneurs. That's what apostles are. They're faith entrepreneurs. They go, they're sent with a vision, and they build something up. Prophets communicate. They represent God to the people. Now, prophets are not in the business of predicting the future. Okay? That's kind of an old idea. Prophets oftentimes, though, will communicate and say things that people don't want to hear, but need to be said. That's the easy way of looking at prophets. Oftentimes you can think about prophets as taking a look at something. They've been given a sort of wisdom. They can look at what's going on and they say, if we continue on this path, here's what's going to happen. It's just the reality. It's not wishful thinking or anything. It's just, this is what's going to happen. That's what a prophet does. Evangelists, they also communicate. They communicate with those outside of the church. Some people would say unbelievers, whatever. They communicate the good news, the gospel out into the world. And they also have a heart to reach those who are hurting, oppressed, disenfranchised, all those type of things. Because what is the gospel? The gospel is good news to the poor, the oppressed, and all of those. Pastors, this is not the job title of pastor, my job. This is pastoral in nature, the gift of being pastoral. Another way of translating the Greek word there is to be shepherd. So it's about caring for people. It's about visiting with people and caring with people and praying with people and spending time with folks and listening and talking and all those type of things. They happen in a variety of ways. And the last one are teachers. Teachers train people up in the Word. They teach people the Word of God with wisdom, knowledge, so that we're able to apply that Word into our lives and into our communities. That's what those fivefold gifts are. Now, the key to this is we've all been given all of these. Every single one of us. It's to some degree, not all the same. You can go online, you can find these fivefold ministry tests. And they're fun and they're nice, they're easy to do. And they give you a sense of what are you gifted in. And if you ever take those, you're gifted in all five. It's just that some more than others, because we're all different. We all have different skills. We've all been given different gifts. Maybe not surprising to you, apostle is high on mine. Starting something, going and starting something. And that's what gives me a lot of fulfillment, a lot of life in that. That's the gift that I have, that I've been given. So we've all been given these things. And I think one of the challenges that the church has had for a long time is that oftentimes when we hear this, the gifts he gave were that some would be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some prophets and teachers. Oftentimes we've had this notion of, oh, those are all people who work in the church and they get paid by the church. Yes, to some degree, but that's not when this was written, people didn't get paid in the church. This is all of us. We've all been given gifts. This is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. My job isn't to do the ministry for you. It's to equip you to do ministry, to walk alongside of you, to encourage you, all those type of things. So why are we given these gifts? Well, Paul tells us to equip the saints for the work of ministry. I just said that. To equip the saints for the work of ministry. That's all of you. That's you online. That's you in person. It's to equip you. You're given gifts to do ministry for the building up of the body of Christ. The building up, right? So this is the idea that this isn't about us individually. This is about doing this together as a community. Until all of us come to the unity of the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God. We're moving towards something. There's a vision. To maturity. To the measure of the full stature of Christ. What are we moving towards? We have Christ. This is what we're moving towards. We're called to be Christ-like in how we live and how we move and how we do ministry. And then Paul has this message. We must no longer be children, tossed to and fro, blown about by every wind of doctrine, by people's trickery, by their craftiness and deceitful scheming. I think that could be, if Paul had written this nowadays, I don't think he'd have to change much. We must no longer be children, tossed to and fro and blown about. Excuse me. Tossed to and fro and blown about by every wind of doctrine, by every wind of ideology, by every wind of a politician, by something that a business is selling, by whatever, by people's trickery, by their craftiness and deceitful scheming. We're given gifts to use them, to go, to serve, to care, to be apostles, to be sent, to build, to be prophets, to speak the truth when people don't want to hear it, to be evangelists, to share good news with those who are oppressed, those on the outskirts, those who are suffering, to be shepherds, to show care for people, to be teachers, to teach. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? And this is how Paul finishes. But speaking the truth in love, we must grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ. Faith is a journey, no different than life. We grow, we mature. One of the things that I tell each confirmation student is, if at the end, by the end you get through confirmation, if you think you can say, check, complete, I don't have to learn anymore, then I have failed as a pastor. I have failed big time. If confirmation is the end of growing in faith. We have a challenge in our church. I'm talking about that broadly. Dave Daubert, who worked with our synod for the R3 process, showed a statistic during one of the training sessions, and he was talking about the ELCA, talking about the average church in the ELCA. A quarter of the people in the average church in the ELCA are functionally agnostic. What does that mean? They come to church because it's got nothing to do with faith. Absolutely nothing. They come because their spouse goes, because they've always done it, because of the social aspect, those type of things. That's a quarter of the average congregation. Or maybe a third, I don't remember. It was a significant chunk. Then another chunk that size, we're looking at half to 2/3 of the average congregation now, is either that or stopped learning at confirmation, have an 8th grade understanding of faith, and stopped growing, with no desire to grow. A half to 2/3 of the average ELCA congregation. And then the rest, the 1/3 that remain are growing or trying to live into faith and whatnot. I don't know why that is. I'm sure it's complicated. It's not good news. Maybe why there's so much struggle, one of the reasons why there's so much struggle with the church and people staying or going or whatever the case may be. I just wonder, what if it didn't have to be that way? I think Paul offers us here through the Spirit the way out of that. That we've been given gifts. We've been given gifts. We've been given something from God that gives us meaning and purpose to go forward, that church is more than just the building. It's more than the worship service. It's a way of life. It's a community, a committed community with intentional relationship and purpose and meaning. That's whole purpose is about transformation of who we are as a people, that has an impact on the people outside of the walls of the church. Because I can tell you, the people outside of the walls of this church, they need that. There are people outside of the walls of this church in this community who suffer from or commit domestic violence. There are people who have drug issues. There are people who are broken. There are people who have broken relationships. There are people who have no hope. We've been given gifts to be apostles, to go out, to start things, to build community. We've been given gifts to be prophets, to say, hey, you know what? This isn't the right way. This isn't the way that God intends. We've been given gifts to go and proclaim there's good news, there's hope. There can be a better way. We've been given gifts to care, to shepherd. We've been given gifts to teach. That's our call. That's our call. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a vision that has an impact. It gives us reason not just to come, but to go when we're sent out. And ultimately, why do we do it? I'm going to jump to the gospel here just briefly, because we're not looking for signs. Jesus says at the end of our gospel reading, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. The world is hungry. It's thirsty. We're hungry and thirsty too, in a variety of different ways, and God feeds us. In just a short bit, we're going to have communion. That's the bread of life. It's going to feed us. And then at the end of the service, we're sent to go out, share this good news, to be apostles and prophets and evangelists and shepherds and teachers. Not because we have to earn anything, but because we have been changed. Thanks be to God.